Welcome to All Elite Wrestling Unrestricted. This is the official AEW podcast. Tony Schiavone and
Aubrey Edwards.
Always wanted you to say your name because you say it better than I do.
No one can say anyone's name better than Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for saying that. But hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm great. We are so excited to have Ricky Starks with us as our guest this week. Ricky, how you doing, bud?
I am doing fantastic. This is great to actually sit down and get to chat with both of y'all.
Well, it's great to have you in AEW, I can tell you that, and I'm not the only one that says that. Everybody says that. It's great to have you in AEW, and we want to let Aubrey give you the list of your accolades.
Oh man, it's a very long list.
Ready?
Very long list.
Okay, here we go.
Oh my God.
All right.
She's got them all.
ACW Hardcore Champion, ACW Televised Champion, ACW Unified Champion, Dojo Pro White Belt Champion, IWR Revolutionary Champion, NWA World Television Champion, NWA World Television Championship Tournament winner, VIP Tag Team Champion, Wrestle Circus Big Top 10 Tag Team Champion, and Extreme Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion.
Wow.
Honestly, there's a few that I forgot that I even won.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So you make your AEW debut on June 17th, which was just for a challenge to the TNT Championship. Explain how that all happened. How you got that match?
That was a pretty insane, just for the fact that. So one, I actually came to the show, to the AEW show here in Austin back in February, just to come and see my friends there, and so. I saw Cody again, and I knew Cody from, I want to say a few years before that when he was on the Indies. Mm-hmm. And he remembered me, and we chatted a bit, and then he invited me to like the after party at the hotel. And then I got introduced to like QT and Charlie and Cody and everyone else there. It was really, really cool. And so that was it. That was the extent of that situation, right? It was just me hanging out and whatnot. And then before Cody left, he was like, we'll stay in touch or whatnot and exchange phone numbers. And then afterwards, the whole NWA situation happened, and I left and didn't know what was going on. And I remember watching AEW Dynamite where that challenge was put out there. And then the following tweet, which clarified that this was open to anyone. And I promise to God that I was watching that and I was like, oh my God, this is how I get in. This is how things start to go. And I'll never forget the next day I was at the gym and mid-set, I could not get the image of me coming out, challenging for the title. I was visualizing all this. I was cutting this promo on them. And then we had this great match and this and that. And that was the end of it. And so I want to say that following Monday, I got a text and they were like, hey, would you want to come in and challenge Cody for the title? And I said, absolutely, I would love to. And then it just literally within the day or two, I got a flight info and the hotel info, and I was on my way. And in my head, this was just a one-off. So I had a plan for it. I was like, all right, I'll do this match, then I'll just up my price on the indies. And then, you know how that goes. Up my price on the indies, and then just keep that momentum building until I get to whatever the next thing may be for me. And then obviously we have the match, and as you know, it's history from there. I remember coming to the back and not really. I wasn't sure how the reception was, just because one, that was the first time I've ever wrestled with no crowd with those types of stakes. I've done that before with WWE where they have you wrestle and, on SmackDown in front of literally no one for whatever reason. But this was a little bit different just because we had a bigger stake at hand. So I just remember coming to the back and everything was very pleasant. It's like, good job. But for some reason, I couldn't find Cody. And I think he had walked off from somewhere, but he came back. It was just like, oh, so good. Thank you. And I was like, oh shit. I wasn't used to that type of reaction from people afterwards. I'm always like, oh, good stuff. And we go about our day. And then, that night I went into the after party and hung out. And then I went home thinking that was it. And then the following week, Tony contacted me. And it was pretty much a wrap from there. I remember like he telling me like, oh, we want to offer you something. I just started crying because that is about 10 years of hard work that I've done, just me. I've never had anyone to help me out. I've never was with any type of cliques or anything like that. I've literally had to do things on my own. And that was a big culmination of that. And it felt good to finally be proud of myself, no less, of working towards something and getting to a certain point. And I sat in this apartment by myself, just bawling my eyes out because I was like, this is so crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm thrilled and grateful to be here. But the series of events leading up to it was something I couldn't even fathom.
Right. It's Ricky. That's a great story. It really is. It's a true, cuts to the chase, right to the heart story. We appreciate that. But I do want to tell you that your match you had with Cody earned you that spot. I remember calling the match, and then I remember first thing I did, I went to the gorilla position. I told Tony, I said, that kid is really, really good. And I think I came back and I told you, congratulations on your match, because it was tremendous. From the promo that we had that you cut that was on the big screen to the match, it was very apparent that you're very talented. So a lot of things have to come together for you to get a job like this. I know Aubrey knows because we are in this, and different ways in the same boat. We all kind of like we're in the right place at the right time and things happen right. But that match was sensational. You had to leave that match, though, feeling very good about how you performed against Cody.
I definitely did. And to backtrack just a bit, I don't think a lot of people understand. I wasn't supposed to have any type of promo package. I came in a day early and we filmed some B-roll stuff with Dylan. And we just did the sit-down interview. And I was just, I just did my regular talking. But Dylan liked it so much that he actually pitched it to Tony and Jess, and he cut up a package that was essentially that promo. Right. And then it got greenlit. So I wasn't even supposed to have that. Right. I was just going to come out and that would be the end of it. So after that, after seeing the Titantron, the music and the whole thing, and after the match, I do remember you talking to you, Tony, but I remember like having to go off by myself before I came back and started interacting, and just had to take a moment because I felt like I loved it. I loved the match. I thought there was a lot of chemistry there. I thought it was what it should have been, right? And I think that was something different than most people had seen on AEW television in a bit. And I remember just walking off and having to take a moment and be like, wow, like that felt great. That was awesome for my first match. And I don't know how long, maybe 4 months, 5 months. I was just like, oh my God, I felt good for once about myself. There's times where you're like, I could have did this or that. Sure. This was a moment in my life where I was like, oh my God, that was right on point. Right. And that's a very rare feeling to have, but that's a very great feeling to have in these types of situations.
I know that I think it was the night before, because your match was taped and we were sitting around watching live Dynamite, and you and I met each other on the indies and whatnot, and we're having kind of a conversation about like getting to that point. Because I think it was like Tuesday night I flew in, I walked into medical to get tested, and you're sitting there and I'm like, oh, yes. And I was like, oh, this is happening. This is happening. Yeah. This boy has so much charisma. He does not know how great this is going to be. But like just talking about the idea of like positive manifestation of if you want something and you think that it's a possibility, it's kind of crazy how something like that can just happen. And I mean, combine that with, opportunities happening at the right time and all of the hard work you're saying like that you put in for 10 years. It's like all of that just ends up aligning that. I mean, in my mind, I was like, oh, this match is going to be dope. And I love the fact that Dylan was like, oh, yeah, let's put the package together. It's like, yeah, let's open with how like charisma as fuck Ricky is. And and just go from there because everyone's going to be on top of it. And then you've got this banger of an entrance song. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good.
It's insane. Because I'm not used to that. I'm not used to people actually like trying to put my best assets forward. Obviously, it's a, you know how the indies are. It's a very like, I've had to do everything myself to just get myself that over, if that makes sense, with the vignettes and all of that. So for Dylan to just go out of his way to put together a package and say, hey, you're good. This is a good promo. Let's pitch it. And to get the music and to get the Titantron, I was just like, this is crazy to me. But the funny thing is, I told Cody in the back, I said, hey man, I don't want to come off like cocky, but for once I'm going to be straight with myself and say, I think this match is going to be match of the year candidate. I'll never forget. He gave like this chuckle. He goes, oh, okay. And I meant that because that's how I felt. You know what I'm saying? I meant that 100%.
You got to believe it.
Yeah, you do.
Exactly. If you don't, then what's the point?
So you end up signing, and you end up getting your first victory June 30th against Griff Garrison, fake Jungle Boy. And then I think your first Dynamite match was actually the tag, you and Brian Cage versus Moxley and Darby. Also the first time we got to work together, so I was super pumped for that.
Yes.
Talk about the skateboard.
So the skateboard sucked. Obviously.
Where did it? Wow. That reminded me of some old ECW stuff. That reminded me of like Tommy Dreamer being caned with a Singapore cane. It's just, and the marks on the back and all that stuff.
So I have this thing where like, obviously people look at me and then they just assume a thing about me where it's like, oh, he wouldn't do something like that. He doesn't do deathmatch stuff or hardcore, whatever you want to call it. But I have a checklist really where there's things I want to do in wrestling that I've been always curious about. Thumbtacks was one of them. So I saw the board and I was like, in my head, I was like, what's the worst that could happen? It just goes flat on my back, right? What's the worst that could happen? Well, if you look at the pictures, the still shots of that, the board has hit me already and Darby is still up here. I said, oh, that's how that happened. And of course, naturally, it just skidded right across. And honestly, there's a lot of people who said I cursed on TV, but I did not. Mm-hmm. I actually was like, oh, that type of thing.
I will support that claim. I will support that you did not curse. I was there.
Yeah. So I just remember laying there and like touching my back while I was getting pinned and being like, oh my God, why is there like these visible like they felt like when you run your hands across a blind, like, shades or something. I was like, oh, Mo. And I was like laying there. I was like, please, God. And then I remember being pushed over. You were pushing me over, Aubrey.
I rolled you out of the ring. I'm like, okay, just roll this way. Show off your back.
Yeah, but when you pushed me, when you rolled me out of the ring, you rolled me on more tacks.
So whatever. You're good.
Yeah, go.
So, yeah. So
wow.
It sucked. Absolutely sucked. The pain is like, it wasn't that bad. I got to the bag. The doctors, thank God, the doctors were great.
Yeah.
I have there's no scarring really. But I remember that night I took a hot shower expecting to just scream in pain, and I was fine. I think I'm a mutant because the pain was gone. And in a weird way, I think I'm a masochist as well, because I remember thinking like, I wouldn't mind doing that again. Not with the boards, but definitely with tacks that are just on a even ground, and go from there. But I think it'll be a while before you see that.
Landing on tacks as opposed to sliding against tacks.
Right.
Just like the way that natural physics work.
Right.
Of course, That's how it is.
And then combine that with your heel referee rolling on some more tacks. That's got to be really painful.
Hey, I was ready to count in that shit, man. Like, you got to be tough.
God, I just was worried about getting blood on the mat. That's what my big concern.
Whatever. We'll clean it up. We'll change out the mat. It's fine.
You're a great talker, Ricky. I mean, that's been well established. Now you're working with Taz, who's a great talker too. Have you guys have you learned anything from him, you think, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Taz is a great talker in the way that he's able to get something over in just very small words. in addition to that, he has a great business mind.
Right.
And in the way that he explains things to me and trying to see in a bigger picture has helped me out quite a bit. I find him to be absolutely like game on when it comes to literally trying to teach me like, hey, this is how things go from my past experiences, all that stuff. So I like Taz a lot. I think he's been a great help so far to me, just in ways that I can't even see right now.
Right. Aubrey, your turn.
Oh, shit. Sorry. I was just so enthralled by his talking.
Okay.
I don't know. So you became a wrestling fan around age 7. What was sort of your inspiration? What got you into wrestling?
So my brother and sister used to watch wrestling before me. And so I would my brother had the action figures. And so there's like the Ted DiBiase action figure that I vividly remember flushing down the toilet and getting in trouble for. So that was kind of like my first experience with wrestling. And then as my memory started to develop more, it had to be around 6 or 7 that I remember watching Raw randomly and being like, wow, this is insane. I remember seeing Taker just come out and like stand on the post and throw his hands up and the lights come on. And I was just drawn to that for whatever reason. And then honestly, from there, that was really the sticking point for it. A lot of people don't realize I've never done any sports. I never thought I was athletic. I've only watched wrestling my entire life. And so there's it's a deeper love than just that. Like, it's ingrained in my entire existence, basically, of just wrestling. So I don't think that my family thought it would go this long as it has, but they are super proud, and especially my brother, super proud and supportive to see how far I've come, especially because he used to be a huge wrestling fan. And he's slowly getting back into it now that I'm on AEW. So
it's a lot easier to get back into it when someone you know is on television, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of television, we're going to talk with Ricky about his experiences with WWE.
One thing I'd like to talk about is State Farm Insurance. And I say I like to talk about that because I've been a State Farm customer, a member, if you will, since 1981, since the year that I was married. State Farm has surprisingly great rates on both auto and homeowners.
Tony, you've been a member of State Farm since before I was born.
There you go.
That means that they must have like great customer service. They've got agents available everywhere. Like, to be a member of a company for that long, you have to be really, really happy with their policies.
I'm happy with their policies. And now I'm happier, Aubrey, with their easy to use technology, because back then you would have to have the insurance card in your wallet. It was a paper insurance card or like a cardboard insurance card. Now you have it on your phone. They have a great app, and you have your insurance card right on your smartphone. So the technology that is advanced in the world has also advanced insurance, thanks to our people at State Farm.
So you can manage your coverage, pay your bill, file a claim, all just from your phone. Some you already carry around with you. Who needs cardboard cards anymore? Jeez.
No boy. A great price with even greater service. So Aubrey, as I always say, when you want the real deal,
like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. You say that all the time, Tony.
I do.
This is AEW Unrestricted, and we're talking to absolute Ricky Starks, talking a little bit about how he got into wrestling. But I know that you had a couple enhancement matches at WWE. Talk about those a little
bit. Absolutely. So I think my first enhancement match was like back in 2012, a year after I started wrestling. I think that was against Jinder Mahal on SmackDown in Houston. And that was cool to just have that experience. Obviously, when you're younger and doing stuff like that, you're like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm getting, my big break. Yeah. And obviously that didn't turn out like that. So that's how that was the first start of that. And then as the years went on, I started to do more with them. I did some stuff with like Ryback and getting put through a table. What else have I done? I've done a tag team match with me and Aaron Solo against the Revival. It's just a big circle, obviously, in life. And then also, too, I had a match against Kane in Austin on Main Event. And that one is very unusual just for the fact that they gave me a live microphone. I went out there, they gave me a live mic, and I talked my stuff. And then Kane comes out, and we have this 5-minute match. It was so weird to me because a writer gave me like a sheet that I had to go over. I'll never forget. The writer came up to me. He was like, "Do you want to, go over the lines and what you're going to say to me?" I said, "No, I think I got it. It's up here." And he asked me again. I was like, "No, I think I'm okay." I can't remember who it was. It was one of the producers. I would say it was Dean, but I don't even think it was Dean. It was someone else. And they go, "He's basically telling you to recite it to him." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and do that." And it was terrible. What was written was like stuff that people in Austin, in Texas, don't even eat at like a sporting event. But I went out there and I did it. Kane comes out, and I knew Kane's stuff. So I knew Kane's moveset, and there was this moment where he whipped me to the turnbuckle, and usually he gives you like the what is it, the side suplex, the sidewalk slam. Thank you. And that wasn't called in the back, and I don't know, and I really thought I was in trouble because I hit it and walked out, and then just right into it. I was like, "Oh shoot!" And as he covered, I said, "I'm so sorry, man." He goes, "No, it's okay, kid. Keep going." And we get to the back, and super nice. Guys, super, super nice, super respectful. And really after that, it kind of ended there. Then I went and did a tryout for him, and nothing happened, and was like a bit in limbo as far as not knowing what to do. But as far as those enhancement stuff goes for WWE, I appreciated it more just because, one, I think I got more comfortable with how the system worked, and just getting in front of a live crowd like that in that setting, in that position.
Let's talk about I want to add something to that. Jinder Mahal is a pretty good guy too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He is awesome. And I haven't seen that much of him as of late. Maybe I'm not watching enough of it, but
I think he was out with the injury actually. And
he's been out with an injury. Okay.
Back.
Okay. That's cool.
The knee.
So when that ended, you said that was it with Kane. Was it still a goal of yours to be in the WWE, or what did you think after that about your career?
So the way I took it was, wow, they gave me mic time, which is very rare, right? And so I was like, okay, this is a good sign. So at that point, I still did want to continue with that. But I think what happened is things changed after the 2017 tryout I did. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'll be damned if I don't relish in the fact of how hard I worked and how out of the water I blew people. Me and actually Sammy were at the same tryout together, and he can attest to you. I definitely killed everyone in the promo class. And then when it came to having to go up against these athletes, I held my own to the point where even the coaches were like, you did good, blah, blah, blah. So I went into it putting all my eggs in one basket and said, this is it. That's how I went with the mindset. Only to get a basic no from there, which is fine. But it wasn't even a no. It was more like, go off and try to get over somewhere else, and then we'll try to come back on you. I was like, damn, that right there really showed me that I cannot wait on somebody to offer me something.
Right.
And I think it changed from that moment where I was like, I don't think WWE is exactly where I want to be right now. I'm going to just go out and try to make a way for myself. And so ever since that happened, I just started to just think more outside of the box with certain ways of getting myself over, especially on the indies at that time. Like if you weren't super athletic and doing all of the crazy stuff, you really weren't a main name. And so I had to struggle with that and being like a character when everyone else was just a dude who could do a backflip and I couldn't compete. So I think after that, the goal for WWE wasn't as prevalent as it was. And that took a bit of time for me to get right because that's my childhood dream. That's a hard thing to try to process when you're an adult. Be like, well, it isn't what I thought it would be when I was younger. So let me try to figure something else out.
And at the same time, like 2017, AEW doesn't exist. So if it's not WWE, there's really no other option. So it's like, okay, well, guess I'm just on the indies. This is fine.
Right.
But at the same time, like, you could completely blow them out of the water. You could have awesome promos. You could like have the athleticism. But at the end of the day, it's entertainment, right? Like, if you're not filling the box they're trying to fill, it's just maybe the opportunity's not there. So I totally understand that it's kind of hard to just kind of get your mind right and say, maybe now's not the time. Maybe this isn't what I want. Like, and having that not negatively impact you. But I know eventually you ended up at NWA, which was like, oh, of course, this makes so much sense because you're a promo guy, you're an old school guy, you've got character. Talk about NWA and working with Billy Corgan.
So the way the NWA came about was, so after the WWE thing, like everything in my life, there's always some type of milestone that I'm like, oh, this is what I look forward to. And so after the WWE, I was like, I don't know what to do now. So I started making these vignettes that I went out and paid a guy and produced. And I started putting them on Twitter just because I just wanted to have, like, in my opinion, it wasn't a vignette. It was an aesthetic, like, lookbook. That's how I approached it. And that caught the attention of, I want to say it was Nick Aldis and then Lagana. And so from there, we started talking and we went, they brought me in for NWA 70. I did a 4-way match with a bunch of big guys. Willie Mack was included. And then that was the end of it. And so he called me up. Lagana called me up about a few weeks afterwards. And we were talking. He says, you know, we have this idea for this show that we're trying to do on YouTube. And so I said, well, you know, I'll have to wait until I come back because I was traveling overseas. And so when I came back, they were still a go for it. And then NWA Power, that's how NWA Power came to be. They came on. And from there, so before going into it, there was no real plan for me, if that makes sense, which I'm fine with. Like, I can just make something out of nothing. Right. And so when I got there, I started to see how things work. What I noticed off the bat was that no one does promos anymore. Like, that's a really bygone. Yeah, it's a bygone thing for whatever reason. And that's an area that I think that I obviously enjoy, but I think that was an area that I was like, okay, I can take this and make it a lot more than what it is right now. And so they offered me that position and that platform to do so. And I'm telling you, every time I went out there, I was always freestyling. I had an idea of what needed to get, like, the points needed to be hit, but every single time it was a freestyle.
No
and
shit.
I love that. I swear to you, I love that so much. So, and I like that because, one, I think I work best under pressure. So if I put the pressure on myself and not have a lot of time to prepare, it's different. And so, you know, from there, I had the promos and then we were doing the matches. It was great. And that's how I slowly started to build up that, I don't know how you say that, you know, that following, essentially.
Yeah. There's a great underlying story in all of this. And let me lay it out for you. Okay. You got to do this is old school talking. Sorry. You got to do a promo to get over. I always thought that you got to be able to do that to really draw people into your match. And you can do that. Okay. And the great ones who were able to do promos have always been guys who can freestyle and not have to recite a thing to a fucking idiot writer. Okay. So there you go. So that's why you are where you are right now, because you are one of the great promos that we got because you freestyle, and AEW lets you freestyle. They let you do your own thing without having to write something up for you. So I think it's a great match. I mean, it really, really is. You became the television champion. NWA TV champion is a historic championship. We talked about that on AEW Dynamite. Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, there's so many more, Dusty Rhodes. I mean, you had to realize what that championship meant, didn't you?
Absolutely. And that's funny you bring that up because I remember flying to Jacksonville and I was writing down things in my head of like just things that led up to this, right? And I was like, you know, it's basically I was writing a journal to myself. And that was one of the things I said, this is so bizarre. The fact that I'm going to compete for the TNT Championship title that's held by Cody when I was the former, television world champion who was also held by Dusty, and then it wasn't lost on me at all. And it's such a cool, once again, a full circle. So it wasn't lost on me at all. That was a big part of that title and that history and how that meant to me. In addition to it, I was able to be in a history book alongside those people. Something I could not even fathom, 3 years ago. So I appreciate that opportunity, having to wrestle 3 times in a one night, just to finally win that, and finally have somebody be like, yo, this is a guy that we think is great. It's good enough to hold this specific title with this type of lineage. I couldn't be more grateful for it.
So you were part of a documentary, True Wrestling, with you and your tag partner, Aaron Solo, who's been on Dark with us a couple times. I know it also featured Mark Calloway, Undertaker. How wild is that?
So just to give you a backstory, I used to go to a gym called On It here in Austin. And this is whatever year it was where Taker has to wrestle Shane for that Mania in Dallas. So he was getting ready for that. I want to say that's 2016 maybe.
Sounds
so
about right.
Yeah, so that's how I initially met Taker, was at that gym. We would always work out at the same time. And at that time, Taker was getting ready. He had a guy that worked at On It who was filming a documentary for him because he wanted to he was going to slow down, and he was going to eventually retire maybe that following year. So he wanted something for his kids to see how the process of getting into it was. And so I met him there, and I talked to him, and we kind of kept in contact with that. And then Brandon, who was doing the interview or the documentary, wanted to do a documentary on independence and how things were. So he followed us one week through a loop from, I think it was San Antonio to Laredo, all the way to Mexico, to Monterrey for Riot. And so in this whole documentary, he wanted a segment where we actually sat down with Taker, went to a barbecue joint, and just picked his brains. And I promise you, we went to this barbecue joint in BK's, and that Taker frequents quite a bit. I don't want to say sometimes. And we sat there for like 3.5 hours. We just talked to him. I was asking all these different questions. I asked how he trained, where he trained at. I asked him about Don Jardine and the whole walking the ropes stuff. Like, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to that. I remember one time I had the idea of like being spoiler number 5 or 4 or something crazy on the independents, and told him about that. But it's so bizarre because sitting there with him and talking to him, I gained a lot more insight on how things work. And him being my favorite wrestler of all time, I couldn't process it. I couldn't process it at all. And a lot of people don't realize is that I get a lot of my ideologies and the way that I do things in the ring from Taker. And you would look at me and you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't have expected Undertaker to be his favorite. I thought it would be like The Rock or something, right? But no, Undertaker is literally my favorite wrestler of all time. So that experience was so cool to have, because who else can get that? I had that man, we sat on a couch together and he reviewed my match from one of the local independents. Yeah, and there's a picture of him sitting right here and me sitting right here from behind. I'm just like, that doesn't work. Only to then, a few years later, I helped. He needed getting prepared to wrestle Cena, and we went in for like 2 days straight, and I just did nothing but like heat drills on him.
Damn.
It blows my mind. I can't. Yeah, it blows my mind.
What's the best bit of information that he gave you to help your career? Undertaker.
Honestly, Taker is really big on story. And the one thing that he reinforced into me is that you can literally make a story out of anything. And that is the God honest truth. Case in point, we had a tag team match in Laredo, and there's a group of guys who are big fans of Whataburger. And so there wasn't much of a story to it. But I remember just grabbing the microphone and cutting a promo and letting people know that I thought In-N-Out Burger was way better than Whataburger. And there were people who were legitimately pissed off about it. And so we just went with it from there. So just the fact that you can make a story out of anything is the best key of advice that I could give to anyone.
Right. Because stories are what sell, man. Stories and being able to talk through them. Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned The Rock very quickly before we go to our next segment. You've been compared to The Rock. You realize that, don't you?
Absolutely. I get it.
Yeah. Okay. You get it?
Ricky Starks, otherwise known as Pebble.
You know, the funny thing is there was a point very early on when I considered changing my name from Ricky to Rocky. And because I was getting those comparisons way back when. And I think it was like the curly hair. And we have somewhat of the same structure as far as face goes, maybe. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't take it as offense when people compare it to me. If anything, I think it's really cool. Like,
sure,
to be compared to someone, and that's when they see me, they get remembered of someone else. That was great. But I'll tell you this though, I choose to be the first Ricky Starks and not a carbon copy of someone else. So I don't mind standing toe to toe or side by side with The Rock as long as he knows what's up and I know what's up as far as individuality goes.
How's your people's eyebrow? Yeah, there we go.
You know, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
It's worth watching this video version of the podcast just for that. Oh, dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's legit.
All right, you guys have asked, and Ricky Starks is now going to answer your questions here on AEW Unrestricted. Well, Ricky Starks, get ready. We got some Q&As coming up here. A lot of Qs. You got the A's. And they are from our Twitter account. And I'm going to go right to what we were just talking about. And this is from A. Casus May. CACUSMAAC on Twitter. Have you had any feedback from The Undertaker since your Dynamite debut?
No, actually I haven't. Taker's been enjoying the retirement life. And he's pretty much removed as far as obviously besides his close circle. I haven't had much contact with him since that whole documentary series went out. I definitely sent Michelle some messages to say hi, just to keep in touch, but they've really just been off living their life. I think they go, there's a cabin I think they have where they just go out and fish and they just hang out all day off the grid.
That's the way to do it. All right, we got a question from Useless Genius on Twitter. I want to see a rematch between Ricky Starks and Sammy Guevara versus the Mop and the Broom. Are you going to give them a chance at redemption? That was hands down the best match I've ever seen.
Honestly, I don't know about that because I went through a flaming table for that and ruined my entire leg. So, yeah, that's how much I love wrestling. I went through a flaming table in front of no one and burned myself. So I don't know. I think I'm over that stuff. I think I'm over doing stuff with inanimate objects because I don't want to kill the business even more than it has already been killed, unfortunately. No, I'm joking. It's not dead. The business isn't dead. As long as I'm in it, it's not dead.
There we go.
I got you. We've got one from Super Vato 1. Who would win a dance-off between Ricky and R-Truth?
Damn, definitely R-Truth. He has more flexibility than I could even dream to have.
Yeah, and he's been around forever, seemingly.
I know. He has the vampire gene. He does not age.
He does not age at all, exactly.
All right, we got a question from Lewis Hawkins on Twitter. With such a stacked roster at AEW, what can you bring that no other wrestler can?
Oh, that's easy. Emotion and intensity.
Ayo!
I'll just go ahead and say that right now. I think we lack that quite a bit, and I think, I don't know if that's any fault of the competitors themselves, but yeah, I think emotion and intensity are the two things that I wish we had more of.
I think a lot of that just comes with like comfort and confidence and being in that TV environment as well, which a lot of our wrestlers are very young and hasn't had a lot of TV experience.
Absolutely. But on the flip side, I don't think I've had that much either. Though to go on with your point, I think that if you have had life experience, right? Case in point, I have been in countless fights, especially when I was younger and things like that. that helps me out when I'm in the ring, because I understand what it feels like to really be punched and to really be kicked and things like that.
I'm laughing like an asshole. I'm sorry.
No. I have no
Because you
issues
are.
with that. I've loved those time periods in my life because it's only made me better for today. But yeah, I agree with you. I didn't realize how young it is, but you know.
Yeah, that's interesting that we should probably delve into countless fights when you were younger. Countless. That's quite a number.
So I went to so I grew up in New Orleans, and I'm of a lighter skin tone, and so the neighborhood that I grew up in was predominantly black, and so I went to a predominantly black school, and back then, you know, the kids thought I was white, like full blown white. So there's a lot of times where that would be a cause of getting into some mischief, you know, like just get into random fights on the playground and things like that.
Yeah. And
then some of it was to my own credit too, because I'm such a little smart asshole. I have such a smart aleck way of talking to people that I would also get in a fight. So there was a lot of times, almost every day, that I was from kindergarten up to like 5th grade, I was just in the fights constantly. And always starting shit with people, getting my ass kicked or running away or, you know, things like that. So I absolutely understand how it feels to be on both sides of that.
And in my head, I'm just like, you just seem like the kind of guy that could talk yourself out of it. Like
that. Well, that's the thing. As I got older, I was able to, right? So there was a point where I had to figure out how to do that. But I was good at talking myself out of certain stuff, but then there's times where I just had no point but to just get whooped up.
Yeah, that may lead to this question from Rashad on Twitter, who goes as Wols, WHOLS RJ93. How did you come up with the Stroke Daddy promo in NWA, and the vignettes that you did were for your introduction? How'd you come up with that? Just by being a smartass when you grew up?
Pretty much. The Stroke Daddy nickname, came from a friend in St. Louis in like 2013. We had come back from a bar, and he saw me talking to like a bunch of chicks, but it was just me talking. I just like to flirt and use my charm for no real reason. And you know, he was like, "Oh, Stroke Daddy over there is just leaving us all behind," because they were waiting for me to get into the taxi. He was like, "Oh, Stroke Daddy, they're just, you know, leaving us behind, just hogging it up." And so for some reason, I remember it was like a year later or two, I just used it. I just started calling myself that. And then it got to a point where I would meet people who weren't in wrestling. They just saw me casually through those vignettes, and they would start calling me that. I said, maybe I'll just stick with it. I wasn't a fan of it before because everyone seemed to have called themselves daddy around that time. I was like, it's kind of corny, but I went with it and just turned it into like this moniker that people could try to relate to. And yeah, unfortunately I can't use it at TNT for obvious reasons. But I don't mind.
Understand why. Why?
Yeah.
Can we not use that?
Why couldn't you use that?
We can say shit on television. Why can't we use Stroke Daddy?
I think that's a gray area that no one wants to really deal with yet.
That's because the parents don't want to explain to their kids what that means.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, I tell people this all the time. The Stroke Daddy nickname just refers to my golf game. That's all it is. I have a really good golf game.
Right.
And people take it in a sexual way, and I don't get it.
That's their problem, not yours. That's the problem with society today. They take everything the wrong way.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a question from Row for Show 2020. How is working for NWA, and what's the big difference between working with NWA versus AEW?
I think working for them was great, obviously, because I had a lot of leeway to make things happen. But at the same time, there's a lot of, I think they were too heavy on the nostalgia. And I think that kind of dipped in a bit. But working for AEW, the biggest difference is that we have so many people that come from WWE or WCW, so you can pull from each and get their advice just because there's so much experience there. to me, if you have that much experience, and this is what I've always wanted in my entire career, I would get so frustrated, so angry when no one would want to talk to me in the locker rooms or when I would ask them questions and it seemed like I was a bother. I just want knowledge of how everything works in the business. So to have that now has been such a great point that I am through the moon. I'm like a kid in a candy shop because it's so easy to just pick, like, literally, I could ask anyone and they would give me an answer in their own way. I think I wanted to ask Tony, I was trying to come up with a new name for the finisher, but I think, Tony, you were busy this day. I was trying to figure out, like, what sounded good and, like, what would sound good on commentary. So I remember having to ask, like, Taz came up with the name that I didn't care for too much. And then I was like, I need to ask someone else just in case. You're the second opinion.
Yeah.
So,
well, I like it. I like Rochambeau.
He called it Losham. Taz called it Loshambo, by the way.
I know he did. That's okay. He can call anything. Taz can say anything he wants because I don't want to get stretched. I don't want to get stretched or choked out on set.
I got your back, Tony. I wanted to apologize publicly. I didn't give you a dap, man. I went to, for some reason, I pulled it away too quick.
That's okay. That's okay, you shitheel. I get you. Okay, so this is probably a question that a lot of fans want to know, and this is just your opinion. This is from Barry Jerry, J.A. on Twitter. Who do you think on the Indies should get the next chance at the TNT Championship like you and Eddie Kingston and Warhorse did?
Dang, that's a hard one because I kind of opened the doors for Eddie and Warhorse.
Sure, yeah, you did.
Man, that's
guys
a very
with promo,
difficult question.
guys with vignettes. We seem to have a trend going.
Right. I would say there's a guy named Moonshine Mantell that he's just a big hoss-looking dude. I think that would be it. If we're speaking frankly, this is not a knock to people, but I just don't think there's the current crop of independent guys are ready to just be on there. And that may sound like a negative thing, but let's just be real. That's the only guy that I can see in the forefront that I would choose for sure. There's a lot of great guys. They just need more time to develop. And I think once we have that, they'll be perfect. But for right now, that would be the only guy that I could think of.
We have a question from Leslie V13. I know you had mentioned your debut is in front of no crowd, and you actually haven't gotten a chance to perform in front of the AEW crowd, which is insane. I didn't realize that, yeah. Trust me, when it happens again, it's going to be nuts. But how is life for you working during a pandemic and any sort of adjustments, like working for a new company in the current state of the world we're in?
You know, I've somehow gotten used to it. I've never really sat down and thought about the fact that I wrestle in front of no one. I like it. I think here's the thing. I was talking to someone last week when we were at the other party. I think wrestling this way only helps us because now we can really strip away all of the tropes, right? And really get down to the bare bones of what wrestling is at its core. And of course, it's the entertainment, but now we have to figure out how to entertain without relying on an audible reaction. We have to just take a stab in the dark and say, this is what's going to get a reaction for the people watching at home, right? So the things that usually used to work with the crowd doesn't anymore. But at its foundation, the bare bone structure of a wrestling match still works in this. You just have to strip away everything else. So I actually like it. I find it to be a great challenge just because, how often can you do this where you don't have a crowd and you don't have anything to really play off of? You have to find something else inside of you to bring that out. And I think it's only good. Everyone at AEW has been very great as far as feedback goes. So I haven't felt weird about wrestling and making mistakes. It's expected. I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to be corrected and I'm going to fix it next time. So I don't mind it. Though I miss the crowd, but I'm used to it now.
All right. Jay Matrine, that's Joshua on Twitter. How does it feel being on the TV and the promotion is different from performing on the indies? And who do you look forward to wrestling most in AEW? I hope it's Sammy Guevara.
You know, I'll answer that last part. I actually do look forward to wrestling Sammy. I look forward to wrestling MJF. I look forward to wrestling Cody again and Moxley. I feel like I have good chemistry with most people there. Just expecting that. But as far as how it is to wrestle on TV, I don't think of it any different than if I was wrestling on the Indies.
Right.
Let me put it in this way. When I wrestle on Dark, Dark is Dynamite to me. When I wrestle on Dynamite, Dynamite is Dynamite to me. When I wrestle on the Independents, an indie show is a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam or pay-per-view or All Out or whatever you want to call it. So they all are the same to me in the fact that they are of utmost importance, point blank. And so that's how I approach things.
You have to practice how you play. It's if you don't treat it like it's the most important thing, you're never ever going to hit that spot.
Yeah. A big thing with me is I hate faking the funk. If I can't do something and be genuine in it, I don't want to do it at all. And that comes to wrestling, that comes to the promos, it comes to all of it. So my whole my whole outlook is that it is a very real thing to me. So the Dark is just as important as a Dynamite or a pay-per-view. So that helps me out.
I absolutely love that. I wanted to thank you, Ricky, for being here today on AEW Unrestricted. I'm so happy I get to work with you and see you every week. Such a wonderful addition to our family. So great. You can subscribe to AEW Unrestricted wherever you get your podcasts for free. Be sure to like, be sure to leave a comment. All that stuff's really important because we love to hear from our fans. You can also watch us on YouTube on I think it's the TNT Drama YouTube page. Tony's going to correct me.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. I got a text from Stacy too saying, yeah, cool, great. I know exactly where to find our product. Tune into AEW Dynamite every Wednesday at 8/7 Central on TNT. I'm Aubrey Edwards.
And I'm Tony Schiavone. Thanks for listening to AEW Unrestricted and Ricky Starks.
Boom.
Thank you, guys.